Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the SDSU Football Podcast. I'm Andre Hagverdian and joined by Paul. This is our live show recap of Game 1 of the 100th SDSU football season. Not the way Aztec Nation wanted the season to start, with a loss to Arizona by 38-20. A lot went wrong from the first play of the game on.
Yeah.
Before we get into actually what went wrong in the play, I think it's still important to mention that this was the opening game of Snapdragon Stadium and the culmination of all those efforts by a lot of hardworking people. The stadium was in great shape, great atmosphere. I know it was hot. There's no way you can get around that. It was hot. It was hot for us, even in the press box. I mean, it was a brutal day. So, outside of that, obviously the stadium is a success, but the game didn't go as we liked it. So what are your opening thoughts, Paul?
Well, first I would just like to shout out anybody who was having trouble with the heat. There were, from like the driving in time to all the way to the end, there were paramedics and fire trucks and things like that there. So anybody who's, struggling with that or had issues with that, we hope everything's okay. As of the press conference, there was nothing that JD Wicker knew of anything that was like super serious. So we hope that continues. I agree. I think that the takeaway from today, the game on the field, I think is going to be the footnote, and people aren't going to they're going to, oh yeah, they lost to Arizona, and it's not going to be this thing that you're going to remember. But I think that, can you hear that?
Yeah.
All right. I probably should go deal with that, man. I'm sorry. So can you take it?
Yeah. All right. Paul has some family duties to take care of. But let us know. Let us know in the comments what you thought about the stadium, about the game. It was obviously not a good game all around for the offense or the defense. I think San Diego State is typically known as a defensive team, making teams uncomfortable defensively, taking the ball away and using kind of a running game. But even the defense from the opening drive, giving up a 16-play, 66-yard drive that took over 5 minutes, that definitely, even though it ended up in a field goal, I think that set the tone. Arizona got a lot of confidence in what they were trying to do. Obviously, after last year's performance, it was interesting to see how they would battle this year. Let us know in the comments what you guys thought of the game. I think overall, Jacob Cowing, I wrote if you read my preview article, Jacob Cowing was the 9th leading receiver in FBS last year for UTEP. And, I said that key matchup was probably going to be that slot matchup with Jacob Cowing and against Sedarius Barfield. And Cowing, obviously, with 152 yards and 3 touchdowns, got the better end of that. And I think it was kind of unfair to put Barfield into that position, having to cover such a great wide receiver. And the ways that Arizona can get him involved in the passing game. Obviously UTEP got him involved with a lot of stuff over the middle, a lot of slants, a lot of short stuff, yards after catch. He had 59 yards after catch today, which is almost 40% of his yards, which is definitely a lot. And one thing Coach Hoke said in the post-game press conference is that they were terrible tackling today. And he said it was the worst he's seen from a team tackling in a long time. And so looks like Paul's back.
Yeah, I'm back. My goodness. It looks like, not everyone's handling the Aztecs loss very well, apparently.
Did you give them a shoulder to cry on?
I gave them a shoulder to cry on, and they were not obliging. I don't know that my girls like that very much. Sorry about that. I think that what I was trying to say is I think that overall, when we think back to Today, we're going to remember it being the first game. We're going to remember it being really hot. And then we're going to remember that, a San Diego team lost on national television. I think that's going to be kind of the biggest takeaway. And that was my opening kind of idea that I wanted to make sure I said before we jumped into the nuts and bolts of today.
Yeah, we've got a question from Gene Schaefer. Why did they wear their black uniforms? Obviously, that goes back to the Heat comment. A lot of teams, and I think the Chargers always did this, is wear white during 1:00 home games early in the season, because obviously white is better than black when it comes to, keeping heat off of the body. My guess is that for the opening game of Snapdragon Stadium and, the black and red, that they went with the traditional colors. We didn't ask JD Wicker or Brady Hoke about that decision, and they'd probably say it didn't really matter anyway. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, no, I mean, that was the first thing that we talked about up in the press box, was like how interesting that they did that. I think that's what it is. I think they're trying to brand themselves, and those are the uniforms that people know them from. And people have said, they're some of the nicest uniforms in college football. So I think it was for that. But it to me, as we go through the night, I think it's one of numerous, oversights that the coaching staff made today.
Another question from Ryan Estrada. Well, when do the straight out of high school kids get to play? Other than special teams, I don't think I saw any true freshmen actually get snaps on offense or defense. Did you?
The special teams for sure. Is that what you're asking?
Other than special teams.
Other than special teams, no, I didn't see any of them. I did think it was interesting that I think Hope kind of said that some of the running backs, Lucky Sutton, he mentioned specifically, and I think by the way he fielded the question, he kind of implied Sheldon Clanley as well, that they're going to be redshirting. So they only get four games to be able to play and still be able to have their red shirt, which is obviously going to be huge for their development. I actually was pretty impressed with Max Garrison on special teams. I thought that he played, he's a lot faster, I think, than in the limited time that we were able to see him in the scrimmages. So, there's that really funny Chris Rock thing where he talks about, if you don't like the people who are serving you up front, you're not going to like the people who are behind you, and who are in the back. They're not as good looking as people in the front. And so I think it's kind of a lot is the same thing. Is that there's a reason why young guys, it takes them a while to get onto the field. Kyle Crum played. He had a carry and I think he had 2 snaps. So that would be a straight out of high school guy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was strange. Burmeister on an early possession, he had something. I think something stuck in his helmet. He had to come out for a play. Will came in, threw an incomplete pass, and then later, when Will was in, Will Haskell, he had his helmet knocked off on a run, and that forces you to have to come out. So Kyle came in for that as well. So two kind of unfortunate plays didn't end up really mattering in the long run, but it is what it is. Let's talk about when San Diego State had the ball. Okay. What did you think about the game plan and the execution offensively? We know before I throw it to you, we know how the offense is done in the recent past. We know how the fan base thinks about that. Today's performance that isn't going to help that much. So what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that if I would say offensively, if there's one difference between last year and this year, is last year they came out running the football. This year they came out either QB running or running the football, which, as dynamic as Burmeister might be, if you're calling plays to him and it's not a surprise, which maybe they thought the 5 wide at the beginning of the game would be a surprise. I think you're better suited just giving it to somebody who's on scholarship just to do that. So I thought that they came out with a game plan that is not very Aztec like. It's a game plan where they seem to want to favor the pass first, which wasn't surprising. But what was surprising was how ineffective it was. And if anything that you can gather from today's game, it's that they need to run the football. Like that's just what they've always done. And when they ran the football and then did short passes, things moved. It moved. That was the only time that it moved, was when they did that. So when the Aztecs had the ball, I just it baffles me that they would call intentional runs for Burmeister, because he has injury problems. And if you're going to be so pass heavy and you're going to try to make him the most dangerous player, then you need him healthy. And he didn't take like the hardest hit in the world, and it's a question mark how healthy he is. And I know they said it's light and they're not sure, but it's there. And so it's like, why what is he that dynamic with the ball in his hands? It didn't seem like it. And so I think it's just that was a weird thing, just because you want to keep him healthy, and I don't think they did a good job of that. And then,
to go to that point, I think at Monday's press conference, Brady Hoke said we want to run the football. During the post game today, he said we came in wanting to run the football, and then later said, or earlier, we need to get the running backs going earlier.
I was going to say he said kind of contrary things.
Yeah, and then he admitted that the first play of the game was a empty set called quarterback draw for Burmeister that ended up being a 7-yard loss, which obviously derailed that entire first drive. So that to me doesn't really make a lot of sense. If you're going in wanting to run the ball, and then call some of the play calls early in the first 2 drives did not show me that they wanted to go in running the ball. And so
I agree.
That was odd.
I agree. And I think that their inability to just make any easy pass down the field. Like, we were talking about how there seems to be, every team in America has the ability to have some guy just run one route, and he's right in front of the guy, and the ball's delivered there, and it's not a big deal, and it's just an easy pass and catch, and they kind of move the chains, and that just San Diego State doesn't have that. And I think that Burmeister, I think he tucked the ball too much today. He didn't either use his feet to try to create space. He used his feet to try to take over the game, and I don't care how competitive you are. I don't care how fast you are. That's just not winning football. And so I think that going forward with what Jesse Matthews said in the press conference, hoping that he would stay in the pocket a little bit more. I think I agree with Moose Money, that he should absolutely be a secondary option after the running game. And, the run that he got hurt on, it was one of those, like, he's going to throw this quick screen. He fakes the handoff, go through the quick screen. There's somebody there. So then he reinserts himself back into the running play. And it's like, you gained 2 yards, but you took a shot, landed on your shoulder. And it's like, throw the ball out of bounds, because there's no difference really between 3rd and 8 or 2nd and 8 and 2nd and 10. You know what I mean? And, but his health is what really, really matters. And so I thought, I just thought that it was an interesting thing to, that, I didn't think would happen. I did not think that San Diego State quarterback would have the most carries. And I think that's problematic anytime that happens.
Yeah, if you read my recap article, Coach Hoke said after the game that it was precautionary to keep him out the rest of the game, that they felt like he could go back in if the game dictated itself. So does not seem to be any future lingering issues there, but it's something to keep an eye on. As you said, he does run a lot, and he has an injury history because of that. What is Gene Schaefer asks, what is your take on the offensive line? I think the game plan definitely didn't help the offensive line. I think with a young and inexperienced offensive line that hasn't played much together, that goes back to wanting to run the ball. I think offensive linemen can get more used to and get more comfortable with run blocking than they can with pass blocking. And so they didn't really give that offensive line too much of a chance to show what they could do run blocking early in the game. And then when you get down double digits, multiple possessions, things just snowball out of there. I mean, they did run. They ran for 162 yards. And so that looks good. But a lot of those yards were at the end of the game, right? When the game was pretty much over. Jordan Byrd had a bunch of nice runs. Cam Davis had some nice runs in the first half when they were trying to make a game of it. Who knows if, the biggest play of the game could be that holding penalty on Josh Simmons that called back Jordan Byrd's 25-yard touchdown run that would have tied the game at 17. Who knows what happens after that? We won't know because it was called back, but the next play, interception, and they didn't get within double digits after that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, and I think the frustrating part about that play is the flag was thrown really, really late. So it was one of those, like, at least it seemed live that, like, if he had gotten stopped for a 3-yard gain, they don't call it, but because he took it to the house, they called it. And I think if you're an Arizona fan, you're going to say, yes, that was a momentum killer, but Arizona dominated in every facet of the game. And if you're a San Diego State fan, you say, yeah, but after all that domination, it's 17-17 and it's a brand new game. So I think, I think there's room for both. Honestly, I didn't think the offensive line was horrible. Yeah, I didn't. I thought even in pass protection, I thought Burmeister was hesitant. I thought that he, could have stretched the field a couple of times, could have made better decisions, could have made quicker decisions, and he didn't help them. He didn't help them with his scrambling. I thought that I would not put what happened on the offensive line. I think that the story of this game was Burmeister's ineffectiveness, and then they couldn't stop Arizona. I mean, this was one of the worst defensive performances in Kurt Maddox's tenure. It didn't matter whether it was run or pass. I don't want to jump to the defense quite yet, but I think those are the two storylines, and I think that overall the offensive line did just fine. I think it did just fine. It did. There wasn't the time where the quarterback is just handing off the football and the defensive lineman is getting him right at the snap because they just completely blew an assignment. There wasn't obviously that penalty call against Simmons, but there wasn't a lot of egregious false starts, things like that. I actually thought they did okay.
Yeah, I would say after the first two drives, the offensive line, minus the few couple penalties, didn't play very bad. Didn't bad at all. Right. I don't think you could pinpoint the failures of the passing game strictly on the offensive line. That definitely wouldn't cut it. See, I mean, 7 completions and 62 passing yards for a college football Division I team. That's just not going to cut it. I know San Diego State has won games with those stats in prior years, but they weren't against a dominant, at least what looked like today, a dominant Arizona passing offense and rushing offense, and their defense not doing what they usually do, and that's just not going to cut it. And, at the end of the day, it's one loss. Jesse Matthews said in the post game, it's not a conference game. It's not a conference loss. It's one loss, and they've got plenty of time, 11 more games to improve, fix the things they need to fix.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, I mean, I think that there was a very stark contrast to the way that Arizona called the game and compared to how San Diego State called the game. Arizona opened up with 5 straight runs, said you pushed us around last year. That's not going to happen this year. Yeah. And the Aztecs had a chance, and we'll get into this, but the Aztecs they had 2 3 and outs, and Burmeister ended up running the ball and not completing a pass on 4 of those 6 plays. And when they ran it, they actually gained yards. So I think that just that contrast in styles and the fact that they did have success running the football early, and but they weren't focused on it. And I think that was, to me, they ran the ball a ton in the second half, especially as they were trying to just get off the field and say, okay, that we've lost. Or they kind of realized that that's what was working. But early, they really tried to run the ball. And I think that they tried to pass the ball, excuse me. And again, hey, that's who they want to be. That's fine. But the results were really bad. And when they've had really low pass totals like they've had today in the past, it's always because they were run first. And so I thought that was very, very just telling. So I agree with you, Jackson Rhodes. I think that the O-line played their butts off, and I don't think that you can hang anything on them today.
As a Dodgers fan, I guess I have to post this.
Yeah, thanks, Gene. Thanks, Gene.
Thank you, Gene. Appreciate it.
Andres a bad guy. Just everyone has a dark side. There's Andres, but he's from the area.
I was going to say the one interception that Burmeister threw wasn't his fault. It was a slant to Breon Penny. It was the play after the holding penalty that called back Jordan Bird's touchdown. Talk about momentum. Not only did they not get that touchdown, but the next play they give it right back, and Arizona has the ball at midfield. But that went right through Breon Penny's hands. So, for Breon Penny, we talked a lot about him, his spring game performance, his scrimmage performance. This was going to be his opportunity, and I think that was his only target of the game. And unfortunately, he drops it or doesn't catch it, and it goes right into the defender's hands. And he's probably
that's his. And again, I think that's coaching. We've seen he catches everything that's a jump ball down the sidelines in every scrimmage, in every practice. And it seems like every time we watch him on a slant, he drops the ball. And so that wasn't Jesse Matthews on that play. Why, you know what I mean? That was probably Burmeister's best pass of the day. He put it in between a window. It was and yet at the same time, that's not putting your guys in what they've shown. At least, again, we're not there enough to be able to say exactly what it is, but there's a comfort level on slants that I think was pretty apparent to us from Breon Penny, and just asking him to do something that he had never done after a giant momentum play got taken away. Yes, it's a play you should have, but also man, is that really the go-to, where you want to put the pressure of your offense, and I think that I don't know. I guess you have to use all your guys, but man, I just thought that was a interesting place for him to be able to get the ball when you didn't really see him get the ball in any of the places that he looked like he was strong throughout camp.
Anything else on the San Diego State offense before we move on?
I thought that their stable backs looked really, really good. Obviously, the fumble at the end kind of marred a pretty good day by the group, but they just kept running out, electric guys after electric guy after electric guy. We were talking about how Jalen Armstead didn't really get any carries, and then he got a really long gain at the very, very end. So it's the same broken record, and people, and San Diego State fans might have to choose between winning and passing the football because they have a very, very clear recipe.
They want both.
They do. They want both. And I don't know. I don't know if I don't know what it is, but you at one point pointed out that Jordan Berkshire and Lucas Johnson were clearly superior to Burmeister today. And I think that Yeah, I think it's very fair.
At times.
At times. But I mean, when? What points? Yeah, they were bad at times too. But I'm just saying, like,
they had their bad games.
absolutely, very bad moments. But
year.
This was a bad game, you know.
Yeah, I mean the reason why the reason why you have to redshirt really talented guys like Lucky Sutton and Sheldon Canley, who can probably step in and play really well in Division One, is because you got 5 guys ahead of them that are really good as well.
Right.
And
good point.
And finding carries and opportunities for all 5 of those guys is really hard, and they're going to be battling for those. And I think, which is more reason why you feature them, more than the passing game with Burmeister and the receivers. Before we get to the Arizona offense, Ryan says, I was glad to see the precision on that field goal. Really good kick. I sense a little bit of sarcasm here, but I will say, if you watch my preview show, I said I was a little concerned about Jack Browning based on how he had done up to the game, but he made both of his field goals. He had a great punt that landed at the 1 yard line and bounced back and was down to the 3, which led to the punt block touchdown. He had a long of a 57 punt. So his part of what he did, all his kickoffs, I believe, went into the end zone for touchback. So Browning might have been the best player on the field for the Aztecs today.
Hey. One of his kickoffs did get returned, but he kicked it into the end zone, and the returner didn't get it back to the 20. He had a 15-yard punt. I think it's tough to.
Right,
yeah. I mean, but I think that field goals. I think it was great, especially they were down 10-0. They had gotten Burmeister tried to dance and take a sack, and he took a kind of a sack that made him lose a decent amount of yards, and then he came in and he made a long field goal, which I thought was very, very clutch at that point. And it should give them confidence that they're going to be okay in that area. So I thought special teams was their best phase between the 3. And
they did give up a block punt.
They did give up a block punt. No, see, didn't right. It was their best, which speaks more about offense and defense. When you have a 15-yard punt, and you also, after having to watch the Utah State game and seeing your punts get blocked, you get a punt block that opened up their first touchdown drive because they only had a short field to go on.
Yeah, okay. And then getting to the Arizona offense against the San Diego State defense, not the typical San Diego State vaunted defense that we're used to. Brady Hoke said after the game that he thought it was one of the worst tackling he had seen from a team in a long time. What did you see, from the opening drive on that prevented San Diego State's defense from doing what they usually do?
I need to look at it deeper and probably be one of the way I open up my grades article, but I thought that Arizona absolutely won first down. And when you have a quarterback who's good, and De Laura looked infinitely better than what San Diego State has thrown out the past few years. And you give them the option of where you're not sure whether they're going to pass or they're going to run. It's just a really bad recipe. They San Diego State always seemed to be behind the downs, and Arizona always seemed to get 7, 8. Like it was like, oh man, they only got 4 yards on first down. Okay, San Diego State did something. So I just thought that they lost first down like over and over again. When we had talked to Kurt Maddox prior to fall camp and in the summer and as a part of our preview, one of the questions that they were wanting to ask was how are they going to use Jonah Tavai? Today, it seemed like they answered that incorrectly because they couldn't get any side pressure inside. They didn't seem to just have that, they didn't seem to have very many times where they ran the ball and it was just stuffed. And Arizona came out and bullied the Aztecs. And there's just no two ways about it. That's what happened. That's what they did. And then after they bullied the Aztecs on the ground, then the passing game was wide open. You talked about this already, I think, but I mean, one of your key to the game was how Cedarius Barfield was going to cover their slot guy Cowing, and the answer was he wasn't. I mean, they and what was Cowing's final numbers? Do you have them in front of you by any chance?
8 catches, 152 yards.
And how many passing yards did Delora have?
Delora had 299, so he had half.
Right. That's so. In other words, another way to think about it is Delora was an average quarterback, except when he targeted the guy who Cedarius Barfield was covering. Now, you could, and it was in every way. I mean, he would catch a small out, and then Barfield would be 3 yards away, and he scored the first touchdown by just kind of running past him. He caught a curl and was able to spin pass, and Barfield wasn't able to tackle him. He, Barfield, to his credit, did cause a fumble, and he stripped the fumble, and he was able to get the first big momentum play for San Diego State. But it's funny. Like, I think in some regards, I mentioned it for sure, but maybe into a false sense of security, because it was a big question mark for us last year, having to replace Tariq Thompson at that boundary safety, and Trenton Thompson was unbelievable there. I mean, he was so good that it didn't miss a beat, and you kind of felt like they could just bring in anybody and they were going to be able to be okay. And I'm not saying that Trenton Thompson wouldn't have had trouble today, but nobody was able to nobody has taken advantage of that slot receiver kind of thing as much as Arizona was able to do today. And so I think as the game went on, they weren't playing it as straight up as Barfield covering them, and they kind of split it into two halves and that sort of thing. But it's the weak point of the defense, or it's the strength of the defense, however you want to look at it. It's the place where if the defense is going to work, it's because they got a really good player there. And it's not that Barfield can't be a good player, isn't a good player. He got beat today. He wasn't as up to what Cowing was. A lot of people aren't up to that guy's standards. But I thought that, the way that they chose to answer some of these camp questions, they didn't look like they made the right call, at least for one day, with the exception of Cooper McDonald, who was definitely a presence and made some plays as the starter today.
Yeah, I feel like we're talking about Barfield because he was the guy covering him, but I feel like you're not giving him a chance to be successful by putting him on an island covering a guy like Jacob Cowing one-on-one. I think Coach Maddox, when we talked to him at the start of fall camp, he mentioned to us that they had been trying some of the corner guys at Field Warrior to give them some added reps there, and how he talked about Jalen Cropper and some of the other guys who were kind of had success, with the slot receivers. I would have loved to have seen Avenger move inside and play Cowing, especially after the first or second touchdown. I don't know if they thought about that. I asked Coach Hoke in the press conference if they considered. He kind of deflected the question. I think he maybe thought I was trying to single out Barfield, and maybe I worded the question poorly. Right. But I'm curious as to whether they discussed potentially moving a corner inside to cover Cowing, because it wasn't what they were doing was not working, clearly.
Yeah, and then if you have to give help to that part of the defense, you can't blitz. And so then it just makes it all of the smoke and mirror stuff that they do. It makes that hard to do. Who might be a good player to slide down there? Des Malone. Right? I mean, he started his career as a safety. So I think that it might be an anomaly. It might be a one-off game. The momentum could have switched another way. It was just very apparent that it was going to be third down and Cowing was going to get the ball. And more often than not, that is what transpired. Defensively, again, I kind of went off into Barfield, but Coach Maddox also told us that the most important thing is to be strong up the middle. And Justice Savai got the one sack of the game. But Aztecs defense begins and ends with stopping the run. And do you have the numbers in front of you? I mean, how many rushing yards did they give up?
They gave up 162, 4.2 yards per carry, and DJ Williams had 88 on 14 carries.
Yeah, and so
he was the biggest one. They did a good job on Coleman and Wiley for the most part, although Wiley had 5.2, but DJ Williams definitely.
What was the overall average?
104.2 yards per carry.
Yeah, the Aztecs. That's where they've been good. Is being one of the best run stopping teams in the country, and then you set up those uncomfortable 3rd and 8s, those 3rd and 6s. That they converted a lot of those, but it made me wonder as I was watching it when there just wasn't that physical presence. Is that because Jonah Tavai wasn't playing inside?
Yeah.
And then I think, they definitely talked about, missing tackles and things of that nature. I think that was apparent, although I would say as a positive, I thought that there was a very noticeable difference for Noah Avenger between his freshman year and now having a full year in the program. He really seemed to know who he was as a tackler, and whether it was, going after the legs of players, teams used to run to his side intentionally. And, that was always kind of that outside play. He wasn't able to keep the edge, but I thought he did a good job on a few of those. So I thought that his improvement as a tackler, I thought was pretty noticeable.
Yeah, he had 7 solo tackles.
Well, there you go.
And I don't know, most of those were probably against the run.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it wasn't a lot of corners will have a lot of tackles. It's because they gave up receptions and tackled the guy, right? I would say at least 4 or 5, maybe even closer to all of them were tackles he made in the run game, which is impressive, definitely.
Completely.
Michael Shawcroft had 9 tackles. Patrick McMorris had 8. He had that one missed tackle. I forget who the running back was, but it was an opportunity on a 3rd down to get a stop inside the red zone, and he missed a tackle. And I can't remember if he missed one tackle last year as blatantly as that one. And I think I turned to you and I said, "Was that McMorris?"
Right.
It's so rare. Right. Otherwise, I thought he played pretty well. But at the end of the day,
again, and I don't know if it's up front. I don't know if it's up front, but I thought that both Shawcroft and McMorris, the places on the field where they were getting those tackles was usually after a good gain. So it was more those like cleaning up kind of things as opposed to, McMorris did have a few of them where he tackles for losses and stuff like that. But I just in general, I didn't think that the Aztecs were the same, kind of physical presence, kind of, we're gonna that maybe when your best player, Cam Thomas is that kind of a motor, maybe it runs off on everybody else, or I think we're still asking the same question, especially after today. Do they have a star? We think it's Patrick McMorris, but do they have a game changer like Cam Thomas was, where everybody else can kind of fill in and find their spot? When you cannot take away one thing that the other team wants to do, I think it's really tough. You talk about the one punt that the guy kicked it into his lineman's derriere.
Yeah.
That was the first punt of the game.
Yeah, I think so. No,
And that was
Browning punted the first.
Oh no, I mean for Arizona. Like Arizona
Oh.
they had not held them to a punt. They had that one fourth down that they went for, and then it was either a turnover or Arizona scored. And you can say whatever you want about the offense. This team wins by defense. And I'll tell you this much. If this game was where San Diego State usually holds their opponent, so let's say Arizona has 24, San Diego State would have won 27-24. They would have found a way to pull it out, or 26-24, something like that, which is what they were able to do. But in this game, whenever there was a momentum shift, the defense did not shut them down. And, you can make the argument that the offense definitely, at the beginning of the year especially, the offense was not any better, and it doesn't look like it's improved, and that's a whole other question and a can of worms. And it does not reflect well on Jeff Hecklinski, and just his development, and the fact that he can get different quarterbacks, and you look and they have the same issues, and all those questions that are going to be there. And those are all right and good questions that are going to be investigated throughout this whole year. But you can also say that the offense was no worse than it's been. And the difference between a 12-win Aztec team that only lost 2 times and the team that we saw today is the defense did not carry them to a win. And, if that offense has to score more than 38 points in order to win a game, the Aztecs may not go to a bowl this year. If that's where they're at. I mean, we were talking about this. There's a really good argument still to be made, and Delora might change things, and Cowing might change things. But going into the year, I would have absolutely said that Toledo was better than Arizona. And that was without having to see those two, not knowing how they played as Wildcats. And my opinion might change because of how I see them now.
Yeah.
But if they don't figure it out, they could go into conference play. They could go into conference play 1-3, and it wouldn't even be that crazy.
Yeah, let's talk about Jed Fish's decision to go for it on the opening drive of the game, 4th and inches on their own 30-something yard line.
Yeah.
Right. I think the initial 3rd down play, they called it a first down. Then it was reviewed and overturned. And I'm thinking, okay, punt, great, good stop. And then they've got the offense out there. And then I'm like, okay, they're going to try to draw them off with a fake hard count and then call a timeout. But they snapped it, they ran it, they got it. And then 16 plays later, they got, 3 points. But that was a gutsy move. Gutsy call by Jed Fish, trying to set the tone after what the team did last year against San Diego State.
Right.
That was a great call. Obviously, it worked out. If it doesn't work out and the game completely flips and turns out in a different way, he'll probably get a lot of, odd questions and blame for it. And I don't know if they asked him in the press conference about, how close was he to punting or not, but that was a gutsy call, and obviously set the tone for his offense.
Yeah, I thought that if you're Arizona and you're trying to think about how your rebuild is going to be to double the wins in the Fish era, but I thought that play, and again, they ran the football. They ran the football 4 times and got a first, and that's not what the Aztecs were willing to do. So I think that. I think sometimes you can. Anyway, so I thought that was great. I think if you're in Arizona, for Arizona, I think that they went for it. I think they believe that their offense is good, so it allows them to take some of those gambles. And while we're talking about good plays and solid coaching, the punt that got blocked that San Diego State recovered for a touchdown. Well, that came off of, a makeable 4th and 4 where the State's losing, they need offense, and Brady Hoke elected to punt and try to pin them back. And, like you had said, if that ball goes into the end zone, if it rolls the other direction instead of bouncing back, that call looks foolish. But it didn't, because, they converted it, and then they defense was able to stop first down, and then, tackle for a loss on second down, and then again, third down, and they, they were able to pressure him, and he threw it away, and that was a great call by Brady Hoke, and he made a good decision to I think fans like to do, which is just kind of make those sloppy decisions, just be like, okay, it's Madden, just go for it, and he understood that there was still time, and they had the ability to be able to come back, and and it worked out really, really well at the time. And then of course, once again, every single time it seemed like San Diego State got momentum, Delora and that offense just beat up San Diego State's defense, and they weren't able to really get into the game. So I think it was a great call. I think there were some good calls for Coach Hoke as well. So what, man? About 15 more minutes, man. What else needs to be said about this day?
Well, I don't think we can get away with not discussing what Jonah Tavai said in the post-game press conference.
Okay.
He was talking about coaching, obviously. Well, we were talking about coaching, but I think this plays into coaching. Somebody asked him about, how the how the Arizona offensive line did, big guys, going up against them, and Jonah mentioned that he thought that they were more prepared to face them this year than they were last year. And he said that they knew our stunts, they knew our plays, and they're basically calling out our plays as they were before they were snapping the ball. And that shows Arizona's coaching preparation. They learned from last year. But to me, it also kind of shows that San Diego State kind of went into this game thinking that we're going to do what we always do, and it's going to be good enough, and we're not going to change anything. And obviously, it was not good enough. And so that's disappointing that, the defensive tackle is saying that, hey, they're calling out our plays before the ball was snapped. And that's disheartening to hear, because that, I think that gives a thing about, well, we think we're good enough. We think we're not going to change anything. And obviously that was not accurate, because the defensive line, struggled against that offensive line.
I agree. I will say the only caveat that I would say to that is I think Arizona runs a very similar defense to San Diego State. So I think it also could be the fact that they've played a very, very similar style. And I think that would allow them to be able to kind of know what was coming a little bit better. How they were able to know what stunts they were going to do and things of that nature. I think that's pretty crazy. But, I think it goes back to the fact that we haven't said this very much. And that is that Kurt Maddox got out coached today. And that's just not something that we've, we just don't talk about that. I mean, he if anything, the thing that we talk about with Kurt Maddox is like, oh man, when is he going to get scooped up, and when is a team going to come over from the Power 5 and they're going to take him away from San Diego State, because he's such a good coach. And, obviously nothing that happened today could shake that confidence in who he is as a coach. But I think that's the most interesting part to this, is that if you went into this game and you were like, okay, here's the strength of the Aztecs, it's their front six. Well, their front six got dominated today by an offensive line that they dominated a year ago. You went into this game going, okay, you finally got a quarterback. He has been at 2 Power 5 schools, and he's ready. This is going to be the guy. And he didn't look like he had ever been at a Power 5 school. You were like, okay, well, you got some really good receivers, and obviously Tyrell Shavers made that unbelievable catch in the end zone. But he just didn't have very many opportunities. And you thought, oh man, it's going to be the offensive line, and it's like, nope, that was the opposite. And great question. Ever since Hoke came in as the coach in 2020, he hired Maddox as the defensive coordinator. And so I think that to me is kind of the interesting part of this. We had asked the question of, when we had seen Burmeister in practice, and he had looked so much more confident as a passer than what we saw today. And we kind of, half jokingly, but maybe it's true, we had said, well, maybe it's because they were going against San Diego State's pass defense, because they weren't really covering anybody either. So they got a lot to figure out. And I think that it starts with that defense playing better. San Diego State is I mean, again, if they are going to have to score 50 points a game or something like that to be able to win 39 points, it's just not going to happen too often. And I think that as they go forward, kind of getting back to a little bit more of the here's the run, here's the play action, and then building off of that, I think will help them offensively. And then defensively, man, they've got to stop the run. And so if that means they putting people back into the positions that they played a year ago, Keyshawn Banks, I believe, switched sides, and I think he was playing right end instead of playing left end a lot. And kind of just solidifying some of those spots and being able to play Aztec defense when it comes to stopping the run, I think they're going to be okay. But if but it's a disheartening day, because they for most of today they didn't really look like they belonged on the field.
Yeah, I mean, as we look towards next week, the great thing about this being the first game of the season is there's at least 11 more games left, and there's another
Yep.
one next week against Idaho State,
Right.
5 p.m. kickoff. The weather forecast looks better. It's a high of 79, although there are some showers forecasted. So at least, the San Diego State will look at the film. They'll look at what they need to do better. They'll prepare and they'll train, but they'll look forward to rebounding against Idaho State. We don't know too much about Idaho State yet, but we know they played UNLV last week and they got destroyed. I think the UNLV quarterback had close to 400 yards and passing and 4 touchdowns. So maybe this is an opportunity to get some momentum, fix some of the stuff, especially offensively, that they didn't do well at all today. And so they're going to be looking forward to that. And hopefully Aztec Nation shows up. We get another 34,000 plus there, hopefully in the seats this time. And we will see what they do. What are your final thoughts as we look towards next week?
Final thoughts. I think you said everything really well. Everything that the Aztecs, as far as goals and things like that, everything is still in front of them. They still have the opportunity to win the Mountain West. They still have the opportunity to be the highest ranked Group of 5 team. They still have the opportunity, their margin for error, obviously, for those major goals slips. But they need to get better by the time they play Boise State and they start conference play, because the reality is as good as Delora looked today, on paper he's not the best quarterback that they're going to face, and that's going to be coming with Cam Rising, and that's going to be coming with the quarterback from Fresno State who threw the ball over the field. Yeah, and so I think that while everything is still in front of them, they gotta right the ship pretty quickly. because you're going to go on the road playing Utah and coming up really soon, and obviously you have a very, very good Toledo team that's going to be coming into Snapdragon, and they want to be able to build some momentum. But I think, again, and last comment from me is, end of the day, today was a tremendous victory, and there's just nothing that can dampen it. San Diego State got to play in their state-of-the-art stadium that is built, the first building on an extension campus that, when it's built out, might have 15,000 extra students being able to call San Diego State their school. And so I think that anything that happens in addition to that is just a positive. And they talked about that there were some issues with traffic getting in, and I thought it was good that JD Wicker was the one who brought that up, so they know about it, and hopefully they can figure out how to kind of mitigate some of that as people are going from Friars to the Stadium Way and going in and being able to do a better job that way. But overall, great day, good time to start it, and hopefully going forward it won't be so hot.
Yeah, Utah lost to Florida today, by the way, by 3.
Did you see how it ended?
I did not. I saw a tweet that Rising threw a pick in the end zone.
They did. Yeah, they were first and goal at the 6 with 35 seconds left, and
so they could have tied the game on a field goal. They went for the touchdown and they threw a pick.
And they threw a pick. Yep.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of catching up with the highlights from today. It's obviously a great thing to be at Snapdragon Stadium and to take in all the atmosphere and do that. But you kind of aren't able to kind of keep track of all the other games that are going on. So I'm definitely looking forward to, decompressing after we log off here and kind of catching up with a lot of the highlights for the day. That's going to do it for us. Thank you guys for joining in. Obviously a disappointing loss, but still an exciting and fun day to open Snapdragon Stadium. There's another game next week. So come on out. We'll be there. And hopefully the Aztecs can get their first victory at Snapdragon and kickstart, the rest of their season the way they want it to go. All right, we're signing off. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you guys next week.